on. Say a very good morning to Neil Crompton.
Morning to you, Jess. Good morning, everybody. I'm like the pet dog. I only respond to a couple of words. I keep hearing tyres, tyres, tyres. The only thing that I'm latching on at the moment. I've found a forest of our Dunlop tyres. It's something that we're going to hear as a recurring theme through today and tomorrow, with 120 kilometres of racing this afternoon and 200 k's tomorrow. So just before the cars roll out, just want to stop and focus on them for a moment and cover off a couple of key facts. So this is the harder of the two compound Dunlop tyres, which means fundamentally it's a little bit more durable. In terms of its overall height, it's about 680 mil. In terms of the bit that actually touches the road, it's around about 280 mil, and it ends up being nothing more than about two adult hand palms either side that makes contact with the road. Now, what they're finding around here at the moment, it was pretty much the same last year, this tyre chatters across the road unless the car is perfectly balanced on this very smooth and complex racetrack. Ideally, they're looking for around about 80 to 90 degrees C, water boils at 100 with these things, but they're making the surface temperature, but the carcass of the tyre is not warming up properly. So this is one of the things that is a bit of a challenge. There's only 4 millimetres, by the way, of tread depth with these things, and they've got little tread depth indicators on them of around about 3 millimetres, just a little bit over. So in terms of the cold starting pressures, they'll start with 17 PSI. They'll work up to anywhere between about 26 and 29 PSI. And I'm not going to walk out into the lane and get skittled, but if you swing around and actually look at the lane, and obviously we're going to look at this 5 kilometre racetrack all day today and tomorrow, it's ultra smooth. Now it begs the question, what if we use the softer of the two tyres? And the problem is this racetrack loads tyres much like Pukekohe. So when the Supercars engineers have done the simulations as to whether or not you could use the softer tyre, all the data points to the fact that they're going to hurt too much. Now, what it means for us is entertainment. We love supercar entertainment because as the cars roll out now, what we're seeing is lots of unforced errors. And that's something that, of course, we enjoy, but the drivers and the teams do not enjoy. That means that we're going to see a pretty interesting afternoon of racing, and that's going to be repeated again tomorrow. Virgin Australia details now of our racetrack, and it puts it all in perspective. We've got just on 5 kilometres of racetrack around here, an extraordinary 18 corners and massive complexity in this racetrack. So getting it right, like we saw Scott McLaughlin, Chaz Mostert do yesterday, is very important. And look at some of those key numbers. Average speed just under the old 100 miles an hour, top speed, and they won't be achieving it today with the wind out there just on 270 to 280 kilometres an hour. And let's fly down the main straight now. Look at that distance. It's a half a kilometre down to turn 1 into the braking area where you can pass on the inside, but exclamation mark, warning, beware. If you get on the dirty side of the road down there, you can come unglued very quickly. We saw a heap of people run off the road at turn 5 yesterday. In fact, I could pull that sentence up and say we saw a heap of people off the road yesterday, because it was extraordinary how many people got in trouble down there. All the way down this hill, all the way to turn 10, there was trauma. And I fully expect we're going to see it again today. We saw more troubles down here at turn 12. Now, there's a passing opportunity at turn 13 where they begin to sneak back up a hill, and then they substantially climb some undulation here into 14. 14 and 15 turn into a long sweeping left-hander, then down another gentle rise to the right-hander down here from 220 odd k's to 17, second last corner, creeping up the hill again. Now, they're running wide in a couple of places here as well. They're doing it at turn 13, they're doing it at the final turn at turn 18. It's digging the curbing out at the back, and that's hurting. And how about the conversation that Mark and Craig and Jess were having before about the performance of cars 97 and 88 yesterday? So for the Red Bull Holden racing team, 2 poles last year, 2 race victories across the 2 drivers, and yesterday they were nowhere to be found. Now, day on day, we've got more cloud cover today than we had yesterday. In fact, there was no cloud out there yesterday, and there's the possible expectation of some showers later in the day, and the wind has picked up because there's a front coming through. We're seeing gusts up to 45 kilometres an hour. So it's something that they'll have to adjust the cars to again. So practice 3, it's a 30-minute session, and the opportunity for everybody to take the data from last night, understand what's gone right and wrong with their cars, and refine them now before we prepare for Armour All qualifying. And remember that it's the 3-part Armour All qualifying. So already the top 10 drivers from yesterday have had the opportunity to refine their performance and jump straight into the second portion of that. Some other drivers are going to have to dig out, including people like Shane Van Gisbergen, who, by the way, was successful in career in the recent past, together with Jamie Whincup, who's all the way down the order. Another car that was ugly yesterday was James Courtney's car. I was in a conversation with him last night, and he's really scratching his head. So it's a real challenge. We love the idea of challenges, Scapey. I think we can settle back for an entertaining afternoon to come.
We certainly can. And this is, as you said, everything that goes with challenge. You can write that down at the bottom as tail and bend, because 18 corners, 4.95k is the length of the racetrack. Such diverse styles of corners, and off the road already is Van Gisbergen, and it is such a difficult layout.
Yeah, we'll go
it's low grip,
fastest in the first mid sector,
and these guys who just a bit of radio contact there with Grant McPherson, with Shane Van Gisbergen. These guys have been in serious trouble. That's going off at turn 13. That's a blind exit as you come up and over the rise. So this is the corner now. We're on board. Have a listen. That is bulk understeer. So the front of the car didn't turn at the corner. So when he tried to get the car stopped, he couldn't retard the car enough. Turned in a little bit too fast. Didn't respond to the steering input, and off the road he goes. That's down the run at turn 9 into 10. Craig Lowndes was laughing before that we were talking about turn 10. There's a lot of people that just don't make turn 10, so it's really a consequence of trying to slow the car. There's Todd Hazelwood off the road also in the same spot. We're going to see more of that, because that wind direction that Neil spoke of, that's actually, in terms of velocity, up a little bit from yesterday, has moved slightly across to the west. So it's more of a nor'wester than it is a nor'easter. And that is effectively on the nose of the car as they turn in. There's the grille missing out of the Cool Drive Commodore for Macaulay Jones, Brad Jones Racing. It's a bit of a strange one. That sometimes can come from the front buffeting of the spoiler or the air dam, and when it touches the road, it can actually energise that and pop that front grille out. Well, that'll do it, because if you spear yourself down through the garden and through the Dunlop sign and almost into pit lane, that will dislodge the grille. Neil's just made it up there. It's actually that wind direction. Well, not only is it up, there you go, and there's the grille hanging out of the front of Macca's Commodore.
As I came up the stairs back into the combox area, all that was unfolding, so I ran for my life.
You were watching it, were you?
I was right by it. So Macca was busy assassinating the Dunlop sign down there after I've just done some Dunlop chat at very high speed. And I heard you talking about this little moment for Shane Van Gisbergen as well. So, motocross moment up on two wheels, a lot of air under the inside of it, and now doing a bit of rally driving. So it's a battle for them out there at the moment. And Shane was lively on the radio instantaneously yesterday. I mean, he'd barely done a fistful of gear changes before he reported discomfort.
Yep, what's this? Red flag. So basically the hit on the inside curb sent it into rally mode, and that's just basically pitched it off the racetrack. But your point there, Garth Tander went out and was very strong. I think he was third in the co-driver session. He was really reasonably happy. He was reporting back that the car wasn't too bad. Shane Van Gisbergen got in the car, and immediately, as you said, he was very vocal. And that's the front section of grille that's on the main straight, and there's all the Dunlop foam from those signs that Macca gave a little whack to coming out of the final corner.
And they've backfilled on the curb today, just because yesterday I made mention before when I was running through the track map at 13 and at 18, a lot of drivers are running wide. There's a couple of other spots where they're starting to dig in to the dirt behind the curbing as well, and then eventually it digs out to the point where it creates a bump and a jagged edge to the back of the curb. So that's been filled a little for today. Anton De Pasquale on screen there, car number 99, practice 2 yesterday, ended up being the 8th fastest car. So it was actually a decent turnaround for Penrite.
Yep.
After practice 1, they looked like they had a battle on their hands, but they were much stronger in practice 2. And in fact, his teammate David Reynolds was the fastest of the Holden Commodores yesterday, because it was a day dominated by the Mustang, wasn't it? McLaughlin, Mostert, Waters, Coulthard, Holdsworth. And we've already made mention of the outstanding performance by Thomas Randall yesterday. Had a chat with him this morning, and it tickled pink about the whole notion of getting into the top 10 in his first day at big boy school.
Yep.
So he's done an unbelievable job, and he'll participate in the second portion of Armour All qualifying today. Fastest car yesterday, the fastest time ever by a supercar around this venue, Scott McLaughlin. Took a chunk out of the previous best times achieved by Red Bull last year. And I made the point to Jess in the conversation last night when we wrapped up that it's not just a question of being quicker than them. Compare it to his numbers from last year and it's a monumental leap forward.
Just while we've got this red flag, I just wanted to take a moment to have a quick chat about the exciting things we've got coming up in Supercars. Next month we have the Gfinity Supercars E-Series, and we've got a local lad, Jared Philsell. You have been drafted in for one of the Walkinshaw Andretti United teams for the Gfinity Series. That is pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited for the series coming up. I can't be more proud of really myself and the team for picking me up, so it should be great fun.
Now, what sort of work do you do in the lead up to this pretty cool thing that's happening in Supercars?
Weekly work, probably about 10 hours a week practice for the racing. It's pretty serious, so we like to get out there and take it seriously, just like the boys out on track, so yeah, I can't wait.
Now, there's a lot of technical things happening in Supercars, but what kind of setup can you do in terms of sim racing?
Pretty much everything. Obviously, we're limited to certain adjustments on the car, so yeah. I mean, we can do pretty much anything they can do. But obviously, we can push the boundaries a little bit more than the guys can because we can just test unlimitedly. So yeah.
You're here all weekend in the garage. Hopefully, you can pick up some tips on these guys. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the update there, Rihanna. We're all looking forward to that. And some big news this week from Walkinshaw Andretti United. Everybody rugged up. The wind chill at the moment is halving the temperature, by the way. I think it's showing about 16 out there at the moment, but feels like 8 because of the wind that you can see. So great news that there'll be an additional wildcard entry for Bathurst with Alexander Rossi and James Hinchcliffe coming across from their IndyCar duties and participating at the great race, the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000. The pole sitter and the winner from the 100th running of the Indy 500 a couple of years ago. So
how cool is that?
Huge reputations, and it's a big story, and we'll look forward to it. So for everybody at Mobil 1 Mega Racing to put all that together, well done.
And what do you reckon the opening lap at Bathurst looks like for them?
A blur. Different. Scary. I'll just look up Neil's thesaurus and see if he can find. It's a little different to Indianapolis. This is Thomas Randall, by the way, car number 66 this weekend, one of 2 wildcard entries. Did an awesome job yesterday to be the fastest driver in the co-driver session at the top of the day. And we thought, oh, well, that's okay. Maybe, you know, could be reasonable tyre quality. Got a pedigree, had a win in Dunlop Super 2 at Queensland Raceway. Done a million things in his already lengthy career as a young guy at 23. Then he came out in practice 1 and we went, okay, that still looks pretty good. And then he went back out again in practice 2 and reconfirmed it. And it was an awesome performance to finish up in 10th position. And, you know, it's an uncluttered mind. He's just all full of enthusiasm. He's never been in a Mustang before. There's been a big build-up, obviously, from a publicity standpoint for him coming into the weekend, and he's just relishing the opportunity, and really great to see. This is a guy that's got an Australian Formula 4 championship to his credit, runner-up in Formula 4. He went and did British Formula 3, which is a real cauldron of hardcore motor racing in the UK. He was a British Racing Driver Club Rising Star, Toyota Racing Series winner in New Zealand, so a lot of open wheel pedigree there. In the last several years he's been concentrating on his touring car racing in supercars in the Dunlop Super 2 Series. Year to date in that series he's 4th, and he just came off the back of a victory up at Queensland Raceway. So he's making his debut in the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship this weekend, and it's a really impressive story. So looking forward to seeing what he can do this afternoon in Q2. He can't be any worse off than 16th.
That's right.
So that's not a bad way to open your account. And in case you're wondering, Scandia have been a part of the sponsor group at Tickford Racing for some time. They've been on Cam's car, and they've done a beautiful job in presentation this weekend, and they're local manufacturers of wood and gas fire stoves. So they've come to the party this weekend to support this great young talent.
Rusty French with Sky Sands logo there on the left-hand front guard has been a real supporter of Thomas's. And I was talking to Tim Edwards yesterday. Well, you know what I think about it when you see a young guy come out at his first drive and open the account like he's done, it's actually refreshing to see. He's got a big smile on his face. He knows what the opportunity is. It's a big, complex racetrack, but it's reasonably easy in its low grip. So he's come out straight away, driven the car. He's done a really, really good job, and hats off to Thomas and the way he's approached this so far.
Jack LeBrock on screen here, and two views, looking at him on the racetrack and then the view from the front bumper, which at one point yesterday got a big vibration up in the braking area at turn 1. Thomas made a good point yesterday. He said this job's been made a lot easier by being on the same tyre we use in Dunlop Super 2.
Yep.
He said it'd be a harder task if I was also learning a new tyre, which was what I was talking about when I was downstairs before. So this is a bird's eye view of what the racetrack looks like. We're out of the final corner now, and wide open throttle portion of the front straight's about 860 odd metres, and the wind has a big effect on the top speed, but you're somewhere in the vicinity of 270 kilometres an hour down here when you decide to panic and put your foot on the brake. Bit of vibration in that braking area and the split on that thing vibrating, and then the direction change at turn 2 requires fanning of the throttle. You can see all the lock-up marks on the right-hand side at turn 3. 4 is pretty straightforward, wide open throttle, but 5 cannot be taken flat right there now. So the throttle comes out briefly. You can see where people have flown off the road there, and there's actually a blind rise into 6.
Heaps of understeer, missed the apex on 3 or 4 occasions so far. This is this downhill section. Watch this. So about 200k now, about 180k now, about 160k now.
And all that stuff on the left-hand side is where a multitude of drivers have been doing heavy-duty farming in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting section of road. That's a lot tighter on the exit coming out of 12 than you think. And this corner here was modelled off the old Sutton's corner at Oran Park in New South Wales, Sydney. Very blind, difficult exit. That's where we saw Van Gisbergen off the road also. And then when you turn left, this long left-hander that almost becomes one corner. Back to the second apex, on the throttle, battling for oversteer. We saw James Courtney's Speedway car out of there yesterday. This has got a bit of exit oversteer too. There's the vibration. And then this punishingly tight second last corner where it's more than 90 degrees. There's another car just behind him. He's let whoever that by. That's Heimgartner. And into the pit he will probably go.
Andre had a moment last year at that very spot on the entrance into the lane. Now a replay here of Shane Van Gisbergen. What's he up to? He's down at turn 9 and he's back out in the red dirt down there at the moment. So don't discount the possibility that we may get a shower at some point today, and if this continues it'll be actually hard to get back on the racetrack down there. This is the view from on board.
That is shocking. That's actually understeer. That's the first car I've seen just understeer off the road. So the balance of that car, we talk about balance for front grip or rear grip, the balance of that car is worse than any other car I've seen in that zone.
So he had it on the lock stops then, full opposite lock to try and just wait it out. And did you see the body language? When he got to the end of that, there was a moment of despair. It was like, okay, here we go again. So that's off again. These are live images now. Luckily I don't have Shane on my radio at the moment.
Yeah, I just looked down at mine too. We scanned every car. I looked down at the radio because that was not going to be nice chat.
Get on through there, man. This crosswind's just hurting him too much. That first lap he did was the fastest through that sector. No one's within a tenth of it. So let's not try that hard. Sorry.
Ah,
okay, so that's it.
Good feedback. Hang on, what did you say back? Did you hear?
No, I didn't.
So that's the wind direction change. It's more from the west. And Grant McPherson was just saying, you got to back it off there, mate, because the sector split, because there's all these micro sectors that the teams look at. They're reporting back that the micro sector is actually very fast, so you don't need to be trying any harder. And he was almost encouraging him to slow up there a little bit.
Well, he was. Yeah. It wasn't almost. It was back it off with a sorry on the end of it. So Rick Kelly's also just talking about balance issues as well. So this wind is going to be a factor. You can't talk as much as we do about aerodynamics and then not take the ambient conditions into account. And so it's up a good 10 to 15 kilometres an hour on yesterday, and the directions changed. So it's much more on the nose. Now it's a crosswind. So it's more to the west, as you said, as I was coming back up the stairs. And there's a bit of a front wandering through here at the moment. And there's actually cloud cover. Who's that out there?
Who's that? I haven't spotted them yet. Oh, no. Is that Van Gisbergen again?
Come on in, we'll have a break. We'll change tyres.
Get those tyres off that car.
That's on me, man.
That's actually hurt his wrist by the
Come on
look.
in, we'll change tyres. We'll do something different.
We'll try to find the onboard of that because it snapped on him is what he's reporting back. So when you're sideways, watch this. Here we go. This is fast, 210k. Oh, that did snap, and that reaction. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, we credit him all the time with having arguably the best car control in the field. He loves the wet, he loves sliding the car, but that car escaped on him so quickly then, you can see that it's actually hurt his wrist. That was a wild moment.
So is that number 4 in the sequence? So Mark Dutton and Grant McPherson. So Grant's looking at the data traces, the speed traces, and he's also looking at the microsectors. So he's got visibility on what the competitors are doing as well. This is the onboard. So he's approached turn 5. It's jumped in the rear. I mean, he's literally going from one end of the from the steering rack to the other. He's from lock stock to lock stock there. And with the wheel whipping like that, it can tweak your wrist pretty hard. So that was obviously unpleasant for him. Meantime, McLaughlin is the fastest on a 48.9. Mostert, Waters and Di Pasquale are back in the lane. And Shane Van Gisbergen is all the way down in 24th. And he hasn't even done a representative time. So he's not been able to stitch a lap together. So at our count, and there might be more, it's at least 4 times off the road. And he's done a 156.7, makes him 7.8 seconds slower than the fastest car.
And he reported back on the radio to say, sorry guys, it's just hard to drive. Now when Shane Van Gisbergen says it's hard to drive, it's hard to drive.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Now, while all that's been going on and distracting us, look over here. Simona Di Silvestro's up in 5th. Todd Hazelwood is up in 6th. So it's a little bit mixed up there today. A bit of this will be tyre condition. Now, as we ride with Scott McLaughlin, he's just done the fastest first sector that we've seen in this session. He's done a 41.8. He may threaten the numbers that he's already posted in a 148.9. And that's his teammate in the foreground.
I'm picking up, I think the bottom of that hill at turn 10 is actually encouraging more understeer right at the bottom of the hill because it's almost a tailwind down there now. He had understeer then. That's the first time I've seen McLaughlin with understeer in that zone because everybody's been battling with oversteer through the course of the weekend so far. Beautiful middle sector also. So he's fastest in the first, fastest in the second. He's on for the best time, which is already his, 48.9. He's on for a low 8 now. Yesterday, remember, he did a 48.1.
Remarked on this in the studio with Jess yesterday. I'm interested in the rate with which he turns the steering wheel and the way he changes direction. It hooked up on the rev limiter there coming out of gear. And he's just actually...
Cool it off there, in this lap.
Yeah, he's angry.
48.4, so he's a bit cranky with himself, but still good enough to be the best of everybody that's currently out there. 0.8 of a second up on Chaz Mostert. Dick Johnson and Ben Croak in conversation as Jack Smith, the other wild card this weekend, wanders wide in the SCT Holden Commodore. This is a Brad Jones Racing entry, making it 4 from that squad this weekend. And smoke signals in the foreground. That's Jack, and the SOS is I brake too late.
I like the way you make stuff simple. It's very good. The SOS.
James Courtney in conversation with Carl Foe, and that car yesterday was just frightening. We spent a lap or two riding with him, and it was scary from the commentary box, let alone in the car. This is what it looks like out there at the moment. I'll come back to the point about Scott McLaughlin in a tick. So anti-roll bar, big anti-roll bar changes, and James still tweaking them on the way into the braking area. So they would have had to make really big changes overnight to try and get it to somewhere like a behaviour.
It hasn't changed because your point from yesterday, as soon as he turns the wheel, it's oversteering. And watch this. It has not changed its characteristic. Even there, he hardly turned the wheel. The steering input was minimal, and immediately it was in opposite lock. So when you're turning the right direction for the corner, we call that positive lock, and there's not much of that going on the way into the corner for James. Now watch this. This is where I reckon there's more understeer down the bottom now, Neil, because of the tailwind. See that push? There's definitely more understeer.
Well, there's a hollow in the road there as well, which encourages that. There's no doubt that that's a pretty significant crosswind at that point.
Now this is where you were explaining yesterday, on the dirt coming up to 13, but you said yesterday that the initial turn in here, well, it's better, only just. It's further into the corner, isn't it?
He teeters it though.
Yeah.
Like he kind of invites it to turn, and then can you just change direction gently without biting me is the message, because the way in which he just tickles the steering wheel, he moves it a couple of degrees and then you can almost see him flinching, getting ready for the oversteer catch.
Like being invited to the party, but then the doorman says you can't come in.
Yeah, I've got to pass.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the point I was going to make about Scott McLaughlin, the onboard view over his shoulder, and there's some technique in this, together with the car obviously being well set up. Scott runs in initially with a gentle direction change, but he doesn't run the traditional square line to the corner like you used to, for example. He does a little bit more like what we talked about with Craig Lowndes. He runs it at the corner a bit, then he winds more steering lock on, and as he does build that front tyre shoulder load, it doesn't unload in the rear of the car like some of the others that we're witnessing. So they've got that thing working a lot better for whatever reason. And obviously there'll be partisan views up and down the pit lane as to why that may be. So we'll see what this run looks like now for Shane van Gisbergen, and curious to know what they've changed. Let's get to Greg.
Yeah, we'll just quickly tap Mark Dutton. Thanks for your time, mate. Watching Shane van Gisbergen out there, using some interesting lines. Most of them have been off the racetrack at the moment. You were running around with a P3 tyre, you put on a P2 now. Did you make any changes in between there? I mean, I wouldn't imagine there'd be too much relative information at the moment.
No, just tyres at this stage. Obviously, the nature of this circuit allows you to push hard and sometimes too hard. So Shibby's working with him that with the wind changes, you've got to make sure that you're not expecting too much or unrealistic expectations in some of the corners.
I mean, based on how much this place has been changed, we saw it yesterday, and then today, very different, no sunshine on the racetrack. Did you go far away from what you had yesterday, or did you just try and make little changes for this morning?
Yeah, decent, not little, but also we didn't throw everything out the window. So we thought, if we could get a lap together yesterday, some of the micro sectors, and when you analyse deeply, there is the pace there, but we do have to make it so it's a better car to drive, a little bit easier, so that they can string a good lap together.
Hindsight, staying on the older tyre they probably used yesterday for so much of that session, do you think that's held you back?
It's a tough one because here, tyre deck's not that great. So it is something that you try to have the consistency. Anytime you change a tyre, you have to re-baseline, so you lose a little bit of testing. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
So we'll see what it looks like after he's stitched the lap together now. 56.7's the best we've seen so far, which has included all those offs. So we've not seen an indicative time. And the thing that Mark just said, Thomas Randall, by the way, just popped up to fourth. That's really key in all this, and I'm not sure whether I covered it off downstairs before, but the tyres are just not wearing. They're not biting into the road like we typically expect.
So just have a look at the sectors. McLaughlin a 41.8, Van Gisbergen 43.1. McLaughlin in sector 2, 32.39. 34.6, 2 seconds away in the middle sector for Van Gisbergen. That is an eternity.
So we're about to get a proper reference on it. He's got David Reynolds closing up on the back of him at the moment. And he's done a 52.8, 4.4 seconds away from McLaughlin. And the guy right behind him, Reynolds, just moved up into third on a 49.4 in essentially the same car. Now it's not, because it's got 101 different things in setup land, but the opportunity's there. So that's really odd, an unusual set of circumstances to see them battling so hard at the Red Bull Holden Racing team. Thomas Randall moved up to what was fourth, and then David Reynolds spoiled the party, moved him down to fifth, but he's continuing to show this great form. McLaughlin, Mostert, Reynolds, Coulthard, Randall, Waters. Is that a tyre yelping in the background?
Yeah.
Di Pasquale, Kelly, Davison and Di Silvestro, they are 10 currently. We've got 5 minutes and 48 seconds remaining in this session.
Where's Windcup? Windcup's 19th, Van Gisbergen's 25th. Both of them missed out on the qualifying format from yesterday in our second practice session, which is effectively Q0. So they've both missed out. They'll have to go through every section on qualifying today.
So it's beginning to look as though there's something underlying in the fundamentals of the Red Bull car, because both of them that far down with that level of success and skill.
What doesn't make sense to me now is that when they wheeled the car out in the co-driver session, Garth Tander was 3rd, and Craig Lowndes was 9th. Now,
that's the bit I don't get.
I don't get that.
And their times are actually quite respectable.
50 dead.
Well, a 50 dead at the moment still makes you 12th in the field. Now, day on day, it's apples and oranges because of the weather and the cloud cover and all of the usual things. Now, these are green tyres, by the way, that McLaughlin's rolled out on. Car number 17. He's already on a 48.4. Mark asked the rhetorical question repeatedly, would you go back out? Would you put another set of tyres on? He asks me. Don't know why. I invariably say he probably will because history shows it. He's done it. So ask that question, Mark.
No.
Could he go back out on tyres?
I'm not going to ask you now because you've already reported he's on new tyres. To stitch.
Greg, save us. Day after your birthday.
I'll do my bit. Oh, it's the 24th now. Move on. Hey, just on McLaughlin, he's on screen at the moment. Yes, that time that he just did, boys. We want to reference it to next door at Red Bull Hot Racing Team. Scott McLaughlin was on his P3 tyres, the ones he used yesterday, and he's just rolled out on P2 tyres. So that's the times that he's managing to pull out at the moment. They've got some pretty rice miles in here at Shell V-Power Racing.
Wow. Thanks, mate. And they would do at Nissan as well down at Kelly Racing because Andre's just popped up into 3rd spot. Now, they've moved the overall aero balance of the car a tiny bit to the rear with a change since we last saw the cars. Basically, back to the way they were. Made them less pitch sensitive and less on the nose in the way in which they've been steering and behaving. Looks as though I haven't had a chance to catch up with them down there, but it's looking as though it's working at the moment. But they were also very strong here last year with a double podium on the Saturday in 2018. So we'll see what these numbers look like here for Scott McLaughlin. He was well on the hard cut.
Now listen here. This is really interesting, this one down here. We've seen so many Commodores off the road. Almost flat.
I reckon that was probably flat. It had a tiny little bit of oversteer in the mid-corner, but it was no biggie. It wagged the tail on the way in, but one of the things that you notice with Scott's preferred setup and driving style is he doesn't mind it being just a tiny bit loose in the rear here and there.
Definitely more understeer there. Definitely. Compared to yesterday.
But he's not overly working the wheel, so his steering trace through there is a set.
Yep.
He just basically sits it and waits. And he's going to get clean passage into the braking area there, thanks to the Boost mobile car, giving him some room. This is 13, climbing the hill now. Watch its behaviour in this double left-hander at 14.15. See his hands? A tiny little bit of drift in the rear of it. He's actually turned it into 2 separate corners with a little straight segment in the middle.
That was James Golding that was respectful there into 13. Very tight. Have a look at how it turns back on itself, but your methodology around the steering input that you made earlier that's a great example of it. And that was a nicer exit. Get on the gear change. Nice, beautiful. So he'll be happier with that lap. This is going to help him, and it does a 47. The first time we've seen a 47 all weekend, a 47.98. And that is a mega lap. Well done.
That was beautifully crafted. So that's the most impressive number that we've seen, not only today, but this weekend and in the short history of this complex. For those that don't know, we're 100-odd Ks, 105 kilometres from the centre of Adelaide down to the southeast, just adjacent to the mighty Murray River. And this entire complex is really impressive. Once upon a time, it was the old Mitsubishi proving and test ground. And you look around at the development and there are variations of this racetrack. There's a kart track, drift track, 4-wheel drive track, hotel, function centre. Already in its short life, it's been very, very busy. They're building a dragway and trackside villas for those that want to be nice and close to the racetrack, roll the garage door up and roll out and go and get sweaty and scared.
Sort of Disneyland for car nuts.
That's it, perfectly summarised. Waters has just come up now into 4th place. He's come up 10 spots on a 48. So there's only one driver in the 47s, and he's got 3/4 of a second on everybody.
30 seconds.
Race director Tim Schenken calling where we're at in the session now, so we're just about done. Jacobson just jumped up a lot as well. He's moved up into 11th spot. Lee Holdsworth is down in 21st position at the moment, but his first 2 sectors are his personal best, so this will be an improvement for him.
Macaulay Jones has done a good job. He's right behind Tim Slade. In fact, they've done the same time. A 49.2 plays a 49.2.
He was quick yesterday as well.
Yep.
So Macaulay ended up being 13th fastest yesterday. So there's Lee Holdsworth confirming the promise that we expected. He's up into 5th now. Shane van Gisbergen, he's 26th. Now, he said that the set of tyres that he went onto, which I failed to report earlier, he reckons were worse than the first set.
Oh.
And he was also suspecting that something may have broken after the off. Now, we'll get to that.
Now, normally, if something breaks like that, would be a sway bar link or... Here we go. Yay, I did a lap. How good is that? 49.6, it's 1.6 seconds away. But... yay, I did a lap. When one of the best drivers in the field celebrates the ability to stay on the black stuff for a lap, does tend to demonstrate that he's been struggling.
But his teammate, Jamie Whincup, really hasn't. So he's done a 50 flat. That's 2 seconds away. Pole sitter last year was on for a double podium. Didn't quite make it happen on the Saturday, but converted to a race victory on the Sunday.
And the fastest Commodore, Anton De Pasquale, he's done a 48.7. So when you compare, although that's not in McLaughlin and Mostert land, the fastest Commodore is a 48.7. Van Gisbergen is down there with a 49.6.
And the car in the foreground, if you weren't with us during our coverage yesterday, car number 8 this weekend, Nick Percat, ex-Convenience on the car, so different livery again. James Courtney completing his lap at the moment. He is last in the field, but his first 2 sectors were improvement. And in fact, that's actually jumped him into the top 10. Up 17 spots from nowhere, and now on a 49.2. So that's a big leap forward.
Yep, good job.
Was that tyres or an adjustment, I wonder? Lee Holdsworth, a half lazy spin, picks up a bit of gravel in that process. He ended up being 5th fastest. So one of the things that's going to be a factor, not only in qualifying, which obviously sets the tone for your afternoon, but we're going to see a day of unforced errors.
Totally.
But people, forget about anyone rattling on your door or giving you a shove from behind. Actually managing your own mousetrap is going to be a real challenge for some of them.
Well, imagine if it gets wet. Imagine if it rains.
Here we go. You like a bit of that when you go and have your super duper, you know, what do they call that stuff? Kale? Yeah. When you have your little power shake. You go down to BJR and they'll fix one up for you. Let's have a look at the practice 3 results. Get out of here. Scott McLaughlin, 3/4 of a second over Chaz Mostert. Anton De Pasquale, Cam Waters, Lee Holdsworth, Scott Pye, Will Davison, Mark Winterbottom, James Courtney and Tim Slade. 1.2 seconds covers the top 10. And then look and weep if you're a Red Bull Holden Racing Team fan at where the boys ended up. And this is so bizarre when you consider where they were last year. So Van Gisbergen down in 20th position and Jamie Whincup on the next page down in 24th. Now, some of it will be tyres, but they've got a big challenge ahead of them from an engineering standpoint. Rihanna?
Macaulay Jones, that session started fairly wildly for you, but ended quite nicely.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair bit different conditions to yesterday, and as we saw yesterday, it was pretty tough conditions, and it's sort of the same today. So, yeah, pretty happy with the car. Felt pretty comfortable in it, which was nice. So, hopefully, we can have a strong run in qualifying.
It feels wild enough out here, standing in the garage. It's cold, it's windy. What is it like out there in the car?
Well, it's warm in the car, but it is. You can definitely feel the wind, and it's changing direction from yesterday as well. So that'll play a big part, and I think it's meant to change a little bit more. So. It's definitely playing, you know, something that's difficult for us to play with, but I'm enjoying this track. I really like it, and it's very fast flowing and has its hairy moments for sure.
I'll go jump in the car then and warm up. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Let's go dive and grab a word with Will Davison. Hey, Will, nice effort, mate. P7, but I was standing on the pit lane here in the comfort of the pit lane, and I can't remember being so frustrated for drivers watching a session. That just looks seriously tough out there.
It's inconsistent. Yeah, it's hard to. It's going to be pretty funny at qualifying. Actually, just everyone's trying to be the first car in the train because the dust and the mud that's sort of flicking up onto the racing line just makes it a bit of a lottery. So the conditions are changing all the time. So you're just trying to get a clean lap, but also to string a lap together here is tough. So you've got the distraction of dust and people dropping wheels around you, but also you've got to push really hard, but you've got to be super accurate, committed and technical to string a lap together.
Love watching you blokes earn your money. I'll just try to grab a word with Cam Waters. Hey, Cam, sorry to bump in, mate. Position 4, nice effort. Will just reinforce what we're thinking. Crompo said today's going to be a lot of unforced errors. No question about it. I can't remember a tougher session than that. A lot of people off, a lot of people struggling, listening to radio chat. It is tough.
It is tough, and there's some pretty ugly cars out there. So I think the big thing around here is probably the dirt and the wind. It's not predictable. It's very gusty and changing a lot, which makes the cars very hard to drive. So it is what it is. It'll probably make qualifying a little bit more entertaining.
Best of luck, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Well, another tough one at Red Bull Holden Racing Team. We saw your teammate off the road on multiple occasions. He was struggling, and the timesheets don't look so great for you. Now, you told me yesterday that it wasn't as bad as what it looked. Is it?
Yeah. Not as bad as last, but as I said yesterday, we're not much further up than in between the 10 and the 20. So no, we're not in a good place. No, there's no secrets. We've got a lot of work to do. We're just trying to find a balance and grip with the car.
Yep. Yeah, so how do you sort of put it into a couple of words of exactly what is wrong with it? I mean, what's not right there at the moment? Don't say everything, because I'm surely something's got to be half okay.
No, I got to say everything. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, we don't have front, don't have rear. We just don't have overall grip as well. So we've got a bit to do. But as I said, we're not. There is hope there. There is hope that we can still tune it up for qualifying. But we need to make the right calls. We need to make educated guesses and make the right calls in the next hour or so.
Does it start from when you put your foot on the brake and get the car on the pitch, or where does it all begin once you already got into the corner?
Generally, as a general rule, the most important thing is getting into the corner, and setting the corner up. But we're struggling to do that this weekend.
Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, mate.
Scott Pye, in your words, yesterday was a pretty frustrating and difficult day. Things have turned around quite nicely, though. What happened?
Not sure, actually. I don't know. I mean, we made a change for the last run, and it was bad enough that we didn't complete the lap, so that was disappointing. We didn't quite find something there. We thought it was going to be better. Reverted to our setup and put the better tyres on, and did a good lap. I couldn't do it again. I did one lap and just kind of hung in there in a few places where I nearly ran off, and then the second lap I had a spin at turn 3, I think it was. So it's been so long since I've had, you don't normally just spin out on your own, so the cars are so loose at the moment. We're struggling a little bit. I think it was okay then. We'll see in qualifying though. We saw yesterday, we thought we were okay, and then as soon as everyone put brand new tyres on, we just didn't get the benefit, and both James and I were over 2 seconds off the pace, so we'll see.
Do you feel like you've made a bit of a turnaround and a gain overnight though?
It's early to say that. We've got qualifying next. That session, yesterday practice 2 dictates where you go into qualifying, so that's really important. Today it's hard to know what everyone's done. Yesterday was when everyone laid their cards out and we weren't great. Today we're better. Whether or not it's relative to everyone else, we'll find out in qualifying.
No worries. Thanks, Scott. I might just see if we can quickly grab James Courtney, just having a conversation with his engineer. Sorry, JC, if I can just interrupt you quickly. James, you were giving us plenty of entertainment on track yesterday. I know that you probably didn't want to be doing that, but seems that things have made maybe a bit of a turnaround overnight.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Hope so. Look, we didn't run green tyres, so the trouble for us is when we put the green tyres on, is we don't have the performance. So when we're running the old tyres, the car, we can get quite a bit out of it. It's when you have asked that little bit more out of it with the green tyres where we struggle a little, but definitely the car's better today than what it was yesterday. I've gone a heap quicker than what I did yesterday with green tyres, with the old tyres this morning, as well did Scott. So we had a big think about it last night. We're trying to test some development stuff yesterday through the day to try and catch those other cats a little bit. Obviously it didn't work, it was pretty hairy.
What did you call yourself, a cage pigeon or something?
No, carrier pigeon. It's good. We sort of took all that stuff out and went back to something we sort of know, and we'll see how we go in the qualifying. But yeah, much happier after this session than yesterday.
Just how tricky was it out there? I mean, it seemed that there was more cars flying off the road than what we've ever seen before.
Yeah, Rihanna, the wind's playing quite a bit of havoc, so it's and it's a little bit gusty at times as well. And with different corners, as it's swinging, because it's such high speed, and these cars profile-wise on the side are really quite big, so you get big when there's a crosswind blowing on the side of the car, and you're sort of trying to turn into the wind. Sometimes it's hard, and it tries to push the car off. So now these cars are becoming more and more reliant on aerodynamics. Then as you're going into the wind and out of the wind, it has quite a big change on the car as well. So that's a bit of fun. But yeah, it's the same for everyone. So we'll press on and see what happens.
Thanks, JC.
Cheers.
Down here with Anton De Pasquale. Mate, terrific effort. Really leading the Holden charge here, mate. You've re-signed with the team recently. Well done. That's always good for your demeanour, confidence. But we're hearing so many bad stories up and down the pit lane, mate. Clearly your car is in the window.
Yeah, it's all right. I struggled a lot in practice 1, and then once we sort of started putting half the right tyres at it, make changes, everything's sort of helping and we're going in the right direction. So when you start making changes and it actually helps the car, then you drive a bit of confidence and you sort of steamrolls forward. So at the moment it's good, but obviously that doesn't mean too much right now. We'll see how we go in qualifying and then obviously in the race.
Anton, typically you are driving very well as you do with these cars, but you said to me just before that the car it is responding to change. And one of the things we hear up and down the pit lane is the car's not responding to change. It's not. So your car seems to me to be right smack in your window and it's working. So you make a little tweak and you feel it. You make another tweak and you feel it. That to me says you're in a very good place this weekend.
Yeah, it's all right. So far, we've been able to do changes and actually feel and have a response, good or bad. It's done something, so we've probably struggled a bit with that the last few rounds on the soft tyres. So it's good that we're able to work together and actually move forward. And lucky enough, we're making some good changes so far. But so the wind's changing every time we go out, and the track surface conditions are changing. So we'll see how we're going in qualifying later. But so far, we're in the window somewhere.
In the hunt. Well done, mate.